I am in. We are live, by the way, but I am in. My address is Gainesville,
So you're way up there.
closer to Flowery Branch. The closest, actually, even smaller little area is Chestnut Mountain. I am in. We are live, by the way, but
I can see you now, so we're good. We're good. This is the soft open before the 5:30 hour where we can do whatever we want, but I was able to check that the video is working and the sound is running.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think what's up there. That's I miss Georgia a lot. I love the woods and the mountains.
We have enjoyed so far what we have been able to do, which is woods and mountains. Actually, my wife was stayed at Vogel State Park a couple of nights this week. She was up there for work and just stayed at a cabin up there instead of driving back and forth.
I know I've hiked that park a good deal.
Yeah, we did that a couple of weekends ago.
Are you closer to Helen or are you closer to, say, Cumming? Or pretty much smack dab in the middle. It's like I'm trying to figure out what side you're. How old are your kids?
She is 9 years old.
I was thinking about, I used to do an outdoor thing. I used to run an outdoor blog up there, and there's this place called Pools Mill Park in Cumming, where they got this cool little river that goes through it, and it's got all this rocks and stuff that you can slide around on and get wet, and it's fun for kids.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, it's 1 minute till, so we can do the regular opening.
Sounds great.
I don't have any real music because I don't know how that works with the new system. But hey, the new system is completely non-problematic, and you're here 5:30 in the dugout with Doug Boyle. I have a guest here. He's somebody that you might be familiar with. It's Kevin Hasting. It's been a while since we've heard his voice on here, and I thought with you dominating the TFTBI, it'd be a good idea to bring you on so you can at least take a victory lap.
Still way too early for those.
No, it's never too early to take a victory lap because they're fleeting. It's like when I remember, what was it, in the 20s, Yale was playing Nebraska or something, and they scored the first touchdown, so it was 7-0 Yale. So they called a timeout to get a photo with the scoreboard saying 7-0. Who cares after that? You got that photo. You know what I mean? I might have the teams wrong, but it's a true story about somebody. Anyway, but in a similar concept. But take that there. So you're now in Georgia, and dominating fantasy baseball.
I think dominating is the wrong word. Surviving is the word. I'm having the same issues with closers that everybody is having. I'm having the same issues with starting pitchers, the same issues with players losing games. It's perfect that this is a Sunday, and most leagues have, or many leagues have, Fab running later tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And that has been the issue, and it is so hard. Are the Reds going to play this week? The Royals have 2 games against the Reds on Tuesday and Wednesday. Can you use Royals this week? And every Sunday has been this way so far, and I have been very fortunate to have what seems to me to be less of that to deal with than it seems like other people have.
No, I've had it pretty bad across, but I tried to play in fewer and fewer games, and so I'm only in 2 leagues this year, and in that one, I still have Yoenis Cespedes on my team because I can't get rid of him because I can't get through Fab. I can put in 40 different orders and wind up with 4 players, but all in all, I'll have Yoenis Cespedes till the end of time. I'm just hoping he comes back and does something for me.
Right, and now I was so happy to get Jordan Alvarez back. I drafted him in 2 of my 15-team leagues, and then he was a late scratch today with a sore knee. So now do you play him this week? And it's just going to be 2 to 3 hours later after this show of the same headaches that we've been going through the last few Sundays.
You got to remember, we play this game for the fun of it.
Exactly. It is fun, but it's definitely different than anything we've done before.
I was going to say that I wanted to ask you a question because I thought you were dominating fantasy sports, and I know you're new to Georgia, so I want to ask you: have you gone down to the crossroads at midnight and sold your soul to the devil for ultimate fantasy knowledge?
No, absolutely not. Midnight is way past my bedtime. That's been
What?
the worst thing about making this move from Hawaii to Georgia is I've been staying up later than I've stayed up in 5 years to watch some of these games that I'm used to the West Coast games being over at 7 o'clock my time.
A lot of people in the quote unquote, and you can't see my coach fingers. The quote unquote industry have been talking about you and how well you're doing. I think you should stick with it as a backstory. Go with the Robert Johnson backstory. Tell them you have the information from the devil. It's easy to sell.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but you've done very well. And I'll say this about you: like there couldn't be. We're friends. We have a lot of opinions about baseball, but there couldn't be two more different approaches than your approach this year to baseball and my approach this year. Because when I saw you at the top, I thought I'm happy because he's my friend, but I also saw there is nobody that did more preparation for this year than you did. Like you were through every week off that was nothing was going on. You were finding a different way to talk about who the best outfielder was. Is there something about your preparation this year that you think really helped you, besides just getting lucky with Anthony Santander?
I think it was. I don't have him in many leagues, but I have other players like him in about every league I'm in. And some of them aren't players that are producing nearly as much as Santander. But one guy that I have gotten some valuable stats from, and a guy that I know you're not a fan of, it is Victor Reyes of the Tigers. He's scored like a dozen runs and got 3 or 4 stolen bases.
No, I mean,
some leagues that has been very valuable. In other leagues, he's on my bench. I have better players than him, as you I know would expect. But
I think
several guys like that spread out through all the different leagues.
I'm one where I'm self-reflective, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. I don't think I'm actually wrong about Victor Reyes individually, but I think I am categorically wrong about Victor Reyes. Is that the one thing that I did not prepare for was, I think, the philosophy of playing baseball. And there is a real dichotomy, and you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in the way they play, between people who want to be there and people who don't want to be there. And a guy like Victor Reyes has something to prove, and that's probably a better pick in a lot of ways than some of these other guys like Eugenio Suarez or Christian Yelich, who don't seem to really care. I've been watching a lot of Cubs games, right? And in the Yu Darvish, where he took that no-hitter to the 7th inning or whatever, right?
Yes.
In that game, Christian Yelich came up to bat, and they had that super shift on him where like everybody was on the left side, everyone was on the right side of the infield except for David Boat, right, who was about 6 feet to the left of second base and back by the grass. And he hits the ball pretty sharply, but into where a normal set shortstop would be playing, where there's nobody, right? David Boat was able to run over that ball, catch that ball, throw a rainbow over to first, and beat Yelich out at first base. Because, I mean, I could have beat that one out. You know what I'm saying? It's
yes.
like I see that a lot in the game, and I found it easier lately for me to watch instead of watching a whole game because of the frustrating part of it. That I watch the games that I want to watch, and then I watch like quick pitching to see all the highlights, so I know what's going on everywhere. But there was another thing, mentally. It's like a couple days ago, Stephen Piscotty had a walk-off grand slam, right? Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was set up by a ground ball to first base, where the first baseman was about 4 feet off of first base, where he had a choice to get an out by either stepping on first or throwing to second, but instead he held the ball for like a minute to allow both guys to be safe. And it's like, those are the mental lapses. You're like, it's exciting to have this walk-off home run, but if and admittedly that was Wilmer Flores at first base, not Brandon Belt, these guys are making mental lapses left and right. And I do think there's something to be said for in a fantasy world of drafting the guys that really want it this year. And there's a lot of guys that don't. Like, I think about it like you wanted it this year in fantasy sports because you play for money. I made a decision at the beginning of the cancellation that I wasn't going to play for money this year. And it's amazing how that took my fervor down significantly, like 20% just on that one moment. And I sit there and say, like, you're Victor Reyes trying to show that you belong to be in baseball, and me, I'm just sort of at some level waiting for next year. And there's a lot of players like that. And I think that I missed that part. I should have been drafting more Tigers, more Royals, more Marlins, more Orioles, more teams that where if they actually were to do something like finish 400, they would consider it a victory. Like they have something to really play for. Whereas a team that is like playing for a championship, like, I mean, Boston Red Sox is falling apart on the pitching, but Red Sox, Yankees, whatever you want to say, it's like, even if they win, because it's sort of a artificial scenario win, it's not the same as if they had won regularly. I don't see their motivation. So I think that psychological part I missed.
Yeah, and I think as we get into the postseason, and then, of course, fantasy baseball will be over. Although I do expect there'll be things we've never seen before pop up as opportunities on different sites, closer to a March Madness type deal, since there will be 16 teams involved, not 10. But it's going to be interesting to see, because typically when exactly what you're talking about is taking place, when the games don't matter as much, when they do start to matter, even though there will always be an asterisk next to the champion of this season, these players are competitors. They've been competing since they were 6 years old. And so as these races start to develop, and if teams do care about being the home team for those first best of 3 series, so they need to be in the top 4 and that type of thing, it's going to be interesting to see how that affects some of these players, especially the ones on the better teams that we expect to be there at the end.
Yeah, and I guess that's you made me think of a better way of saying what I was trying to say. It's like, I think I'm right about Victor Reyes. If this was a normal year and there were 160 games, I think the games would catch up to him. But we're already a third of the season in, and with what he's put up, he's probably going to finish, even with some slumping, a top 150 player. And then you can say it about a lot of guys that, like Don Solano, throw out some other names that are just kind of
Slater, all the guys on the bad teams, right? Yeah. And there was times that we talked about, we had 6 months of off season, and there were Orioles I was interested in even when we were going to play 162, but I didn't expect Santander to be within 1 or 2 home runs of the lead. The lead was 6 weeks to go in the season.
I think he's leading. I think he's leading the American League in RBIs too, that's the big thing. If you have those guys on your team,
right? And Nunez is doing it, and I kind of liked Alberto a little bit, but
I can understand the Alberto thing, because that guy is a hitter. The thing is that he was the kind of guy that we would say he'll help you an average, not a whole lot else, but at least he doesn't hurt you anywhere.
Everybody thinks I hate Jeff McNeil, and it's not that I hate Jeff McNeil. I hated where he was being drafted. I think Hanser Alberto and Luis Arias.
The only difference was that
I think his power last year was a fluke. So guys like that, I think are working out great, especially if they steal a couple bags.
I just think that once it's one of those things that once a player hits 28 home runs, he's always going to be, in my mind, capable of hitting 28 home runs. The only person I was ever screwed in that was Jake Ellsbury, who never really did anything. Oh, I guess Maurer had that one pop year too, but most of the time, once they get to that point, they stay around that point. And the truth is, if you were to take 8 home runs away from McNeil and put him at 20, that would still put him, even though he's in that category of really good contact guys, would put him ahead of everybody else. So I do agree that I'm conservative. I think people were overdrafting Neil. I just don't think they were overdrafting him by the amount that you think he was being overdrafted. I'm like, yeah, it's about 20 spaces too high for my blood, you know?
Yeah.
That was the one thing. Like, you put up a thing on Twitter and said about, you know, who are your regrets and all these other things. And it's like, I'm amazed how many guys that I really was talking about a lot this year who, now admittedly, I only have 2 teams, who I just didn't get at all because I was high on them. Somebody else was higher, you know? Not by an awful lot, by a round, by, you know, a little bit. It wasn't like I was saying. I think it's like I every time the Reds pitching staff came up, I said Sonny Gray was the guy I want in that thing, and I said that over and over again. I don't own Sonny Gray anywhere. You know, there's a lot of things like that where I really like that guy, but I don't have him because people like them more. But
Yes.
just a little bit.
And the longer we got into, or the closer we got to the original, what was supposed to be the start date of the season, the higher the guys that I had liked much earlier when I was drafting were moving up. And so I started getting less and less of them. As much as I talked about Lance Lynn, I only have him on 2 out of my 14 teams.
That was one thing we talked about. We agreed on. I own him nowhere. He's another player like that.
He started going. People started jumping on the bandwagon.
And like, yeah, I'll pick him around 105, 108 in that area, and then he's like going at 82.
Right. Yeah. Yu Darvish, I don't have nearly as much, and he was, you know, one of the first shows for going into this season that I did. At the end of last year, I would say I'm going to be very comfortable with Yu Darvish being my ace. And at that time, you could get him in the 5th or 6th round. And by the end, he was going in the 3rd.
Yeah, I don't know Darvish either. He's another one of those players. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, maybe it's it's finally catching up to me to being somebody like who broadcasts what they're thinking on the air. Are the people that I'm playing with finally like paying attention to that and going, I'm going to get Doug? You know what I mean?
I know a little bit. I'm sure a little bit.
Because I mean, if you know, even though my show might only be listened to by 40 or 50 people total, if you were in a league against me, you would chime in and just, you know, if somebody were just willing to give you what was outside their head. But I wouldn't want to do this any other way. I wouldn't want to do this in a couched way where I said, you know, like I'm, you know, like Fab's going on tonight now, and I'll tell people who I'm going for, which is probably a good segue to say, like, all right, we are where we're at. What do we need to do going forward? Let's look at the TV. You're probably in 1st in your league. I'm in 5th or 6th. You know, I'm right where I'd want to be in a normal year. I'm like in that 86, 88 point range, and I know why. It's like when you're in 1st place, it's hard because you have to go, let's hope everything I've been doing keeps working for the rest of the way. Right. Whereas if you're 6 places back, you can go, do I have any problems? It's like, yeah, I have a problem, right? It's like I drafted Justin Verlander and Corey Kluber and David Price and AJ Puck and Clayton Kershaw, which really hurt my starting pitching staff, you know? So, you know, you do the math on what you can get and what you can't get. I cannot draft a guy that's going to be as good as Verlander from Fab. I can't draft a guy that's going to be as good as Kluber should have been at Fab. There's not much out there. There's 15 players in this league. But what I can do is change my roster so I only have 2 starting pitchers and just pound up middle relievers the rest of the way. I'm not saying it's going to work, but it's going to make my team better. Like, I know that I can improve on my dead last whip and my dead last ERA, you know, and I could probably improve by 14 points there, you know. I mean,
exactly. It's, you know, Lenny brought it up a day or two ago, sometime this week, that it's time to go through every category and decide if you can legitimately and realistically make up some ground in each category and start basing your decisions on that. The hard part about it is we're playing as in a normal year, we would have 20 weeks of data to make that decision. We only have 3 to have the same 6 weeks left. But it's time to look at that thing and start making decisions on category needs, and not just oh, I'm behind in RBIs. Can you look at the RBI standings and legitimately believe that you can make up ground in that category? And if not, don't worry about it. Worry about a different category where you can't.
The other part, but the thing about it's like I understand how this works with the ratios. I really don't. It's hard to say that in the things that are counting stats unless there's a really big gap, because there aren't that many games. Like you could have last week there was like a 13-12 game and a 20-11 game. You know, if you have guys participating well in those things, you can make that up. And what if you have two of those between now and the end of the year? There's a lot of room that can be made up. In a normal year, on the last day, you know, like have you ever lost a Roto League on the last day?
Not personally, but I have seen it happen in leagues I'm in. Yes,
I've done it twice. Most recently, to it was about 4 years ago. To you probably know the girl Shelly Vera Strade.
Yeah.
She beat me on the last day, and she had like on that last weekend of baseball, she had like Max Scherzer pitch a 9-inning 1-run shutout, and like just these 4 pitchers basically pitch 25 innings of 2-run ball, and it jumped her from like a 1.5 behind me to a 1.5 in front of me through quality starts and a little bit on the whip side. And the difference is this year, if that same sort of thing were to happen, because there's only going to be 58 days worth of data in there, the swing you could get on just having 2 good days at the end of the season could be, you could see people on the last couple days of the season jumping 14, 15, 17 points because the guy in first place in home runs is going to be at like 106, right? But the guy in sixth place in home runs is going to be at 65, and you're going to be at 61, right? And you could have a 7 home run weekend. You could have a 27 RBI weekend, even a more reasonable thing, a 16 RBI weekend, and you could pick up so much at the end that it's hard to say you're out of anything unless there's like literally like I know there's no way based on the injuries of my pitching staff that I can catch them in strikeouts without their guys getting seriously hurt or being put on a COVID reserve list. I need help to do that. Like I can't do that on my own. But there's going to be wild swings at the end. I don't know how far you have to be behind to actually give up on something.
That's true. Yeah. And ratios are going to be
even ratios
for a while yet. They're going to be able to be manipulated more than typically at the end of the year. We're only going to have had, you know, basically a little over a third of what we typically have. They're going to move more. You talked about, you probably remember, I don't remember exactly how long ago this was. I think it was probably around 2013, 2014, when game 163 was the Tampa Bay Rays at the Texas Rangers.
That was much longer ago than you would think, but it's because we're old.
It was like 7 or 8. I've only been in this league 8 years, and it might have been the first year, so it would have been 7 years ago. And the guy that was in the lead had David Price going, and he's a huge Rangers fan, and he was leading in ERA, but because of a weird rule that we had in our league, if there's a game 163, you couldn't change your roster. The stats counted, but you couldn't change your lineup for that Monday. So he had David Price going against the Rangers, who he was a fan of. And so he was in a pickle there, but he was also very close in stolen bases. And I remember I was at the game and watching this text thread with all the guys in this league. It was an absolute blast. He also had, I think it was Elvis Andrews or somebody that stole a base that gave him enough of a cushion. Now it didn't matter if David Price got shelled. So he was like, all right, now get him, because we were giving him a hard time. He was literally having to root to lose the fantasy baseball league as a Rangers fan in game 163. It was fun.
I mean, that sort of thing is going to happen this year, but the difference is that rather than it be you can make up a point or two. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic when I talk about 17 or 18 points, but I think most leagues are going to see a swing of 6 or 7 or 8 points in that last week because a very little amount, 3 extra hits could put you up, 5 spots in batting average. 2 stolen bases could give you 3 spots in stolen bases. It's like you really have to. I would say that when you're making your changes right now, you have to hoard categories. You can't think you're ahead on anything. You know what I mean? You don't have that luxury. Normally, if you drafted a lot of stolen bases, you could say, well, I'm up by 22 at All-Star break. I'll probably coast into at least third place. I can trade that for the strikeout pitcher I need or something, right? You can't do that. You're going to have to fight every category to the bitter end, which, as a first-place guy like you, that's what you got to deal with all the time. Is you got to stay at the top, fight every category to the bitter end. You can't walk away from anything.
Stolen bases are a great example because I'm doing well and better than I typically do in the stolen base category. Some of it has to do with the big stolen base guys aren't stealing bases, but that's the reason I don't count on them for stolen bases. This just reemphasizes my point on this. I tried to draft every player on my teams that at least in a 162 game season would steal a handful of bases.
And I actually made the same recommendation.
And it's worked out beautifully because I made the comment to Andrea in Arizona, and she's repeated it before, that typically if you win your stolen base category, you're probably not winning your league. But it's so different this year because the big stolen base guys aren't stealing bases, and the guys I drafted to get me a handful are doing it.
Well, I mean, that was my thought before the season starts.
It's absolutely crazy.
If you draft a Malik Smith because you want 30 stolen bases of the guy, the shortening of the season is going to put his max at 16 or something, right? But if you draft a guy that steals 3 bases a year, there's still a good chance he's stealing 3 bases this year because it's only 3 bases. Just have to find those opportunities, and those are the kind of guys that keep those things going. My stolen bases are
not
fun.
Just by chance. That's actually factually true. Most of the guys that steal a few bases do it early in the year.
But I mean, they're used to. I mean, everyone pays attention to their stats, and they're used to seeing their stat card with I'm sure Yadier Molina looks at his stolen base stats, as weird as it sounds,
right?
Because it seems to me that until JT Realmuto came along, he always led all catchers in stolen bases by having one more. If the second best guy was 4, he had 5. Right. If the second best guy was 6, he had 7. And so those are the guys that are I got to put my couple stolen bases in. I'm going to find a spot. And they're wonderful. Though admittedly, Yadier Molina, who I was big on drafting wise, hasn't done that well for me this year as he's played a game.
That's the thing, and catchers especially, right? Even as they make these games up, he's going to continue to lose time. Catchers probably aren't playing both games of the doubleheaders, and they play. And now they're scheduled for 10 or 11 more the rest of the season. As of right now,
I can speak to Yadier Molina because due to the suspensions with the Cubs, they're gonna on 3 different occasions this year they're gonna play 2 7-inning doubleheaders, where the Cubs are the home team in the first game and the Cardinals are the home team in the second game. Does that make any sense? It's the weirdest thing in the world. And even of all the weird things that they're doing this year, that 7-inning doubleheader rubs me the wrong way. It basically makes batting order so much more important because if you have a guy, especially a catcher who you think is a decent hitter, but he bats 7th on his team, they're basically saying that we're going to schedule a bunch of games where he's not guaranteed 3 at bats.
Definitely.
And the idea that he probably will get the 3 at bats because most teams will get 4 or 5 hits, 2 or 3 walks, but no way in hell he's getting 4 at bats.
Right. And then if he doesn't play the the second
And then
game.
the second game.
Since the first one, then he did lose the game completely, and that's what is. We always talk about fantasy baseball is a grind. The people that put in the work throughout the season, that means more than how you draft and how you do your fab, and even more so this year. We're looking at so many other things, and it's not just the teams that, and we don't even know, right? As of right now, we don't know when the Reds will start playing again. So we don't know. I would assume they probably don't play the 2-game series against the Royals yet. So it probably affects the Royals for the first half of the week. But we don't know if that affects their weekend series coming up next weekend yet or not. So you probably wouldn't play Reds already because they're at least missing half of the week. But will you play their weekend opponent for next weekend? Are you going to play those guys that may only get 3 games this week? It's stuff we've never had to worry about before.
Going back to where this whole thing started, I was asking you what you're doing for the last half of the season, considering that you're in the lead in some spots. And we've talked about a lot of different things, but you're basically saying you're tearing your hair out. You're a little bit, you don't really have a strategy.
Actually, here's my strategy. And I started to say this leading up to the modified season when it started. I'm playing for 2 categories, and they're 2 categories we do not score. I'm playing for at-bats and innings pitched. And I sent Andrea a text the other night because we had talked about that several times throughout the offseason. I said, the biggest stat that I'm leading in TGFBI in the overall is at-bats. I am leading overall in at-bats, and that is by design.
And that's the information I wanted to get out there. I'm going to take just a half a second because I'm looking at the chat room and say hello
there's people hanging out.
Taco's out there, the shaman, who's otherwise known as Durfy Zerk. Remember him? Durfy Zerk.
Absolutely. He's an imbecile.
Bunch of the regulars. They're all waiting on George, who's coming on in a half an hour. I wanted to ask you, we'll get back to talk about individual players. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about, but I wanted to get your reaction on Plesac and Clevenger and the Indians. Because to me, I think that I was saying that there's about playing for something, right? And the second thing behind that is teams that have really good cohesive chemistry are playing well. I think the Cubs are the best team in baseball simply because they like each other. I mean, I know they have a lot of talent, but
they're having fun.
Yeah, like they are, and like it's one of those things. I gotten to watch the Cubs closely. If you make a modicum of a problem in the clubhouse, can you name the problem Cubs clubhouse guys the last couple of years? I know them because I'm a Cubs fan. Because if you make a problem, you're gone. You remember Tommy LaStella was pissed off that he was held off the September roster. They didn't re-sign him. Miguel Montero hit an impressive home run, an important home run in the 2016 playoff games. And he was talking about he made like one statement about his playing time, and it's like, see you later.
Wasn't it that somebody brought up all the successful base stealers against them?
Well, yeah, no,
it's not me, it's the pitchers, and he was gone the next day.
Yeah, he said he was complaining about playing time. They gave him a reason. They said you're not as good defensively as these other guys are. And then he said it was the pitcher's fault. And then boom, he was gone. But they are tighter on that than you would think. Like they have a guy on their team named Jason Hayward who, by all stretches of imagination, is overpaid. Like everybody on their team probably thinks he's overpaid, but they still like him, right? Because he's a team player, and that's what they've been playing for so long, and what David Ross has been doing. I was in the American League. The team that I would have said that had this kind of cohesiveness would have been the Cleveland Indians. Everything for me on the outside seemed like they had really good team chemistry, right? And then you wind up having a situation where Plesac and Clevenger break the protocol, and they get sent down. They get penalized by the team. But it makes me think, and it's something that I say when it comes to other things, like when D. Gordon got hit for doing drugs, right? For his drugs, my first statement is always, thank God it's only him. You know what I mean? Because I'm implying that there's other people doing drugs too. Should Cleveland, could Cleveland be the one team that is doing the right thing by calling out their players when they break the rules? Right? Is every other team covering up for the guys breaking the rules? I mean, the truth is, COVID breakouts have happened on 27 of 28 teams, right? We either have to make the assumption that the COVID prep that they are doing is poor, or someone else is breaking the rules besides Plesac and Clevenger. And the Indians are the only team that have the wherewithal to stand up and say, we're going to do the right thing and move these guys for breaking the rules.
I think the simple answer to your question is yes. I think they're probably not the only team, but one of the few. I think the issue, part of it with Plesac and Clevenger was.
I'm saying this from a fantasy standpoint. I want Plesac and Clevenger to be outed because we need information, right?
Right.
It's like the good news about Plesac and Clevenger is that we know as fantasy players right now not to play those guys, right? But
it's not just right now. I would drop them both.
Yeah, but we don't know the guys that the Orioles are hiding, or the Yankees are hiding, or the A's are hiding. That may, I'd rather know than not know.
Yes, 100%. But I think with the contract implications of this, that it's going to be at least 3 weeks before we see them. And because Clevenger, it extends a year. If he's down for 20 days, he doesn't become a free agent for an additional year. And Plesac, keeps him another year away from even getting to arbitration. So he's a minimum salary guy for an extra year. They're not coming back for 3 weeks.
No, that is a thing. That is the one. That is actually the contraposition to what I just said, is that there is so much benefit for the teams to screw with probably half their players. Why aren't they doing it more? If Indians are going to find that savings in Plesac, I'm sure the Dodgers could find the same savings in Corey Seager and the Astros in Yordan Alvarez and any of these young players.
Yeah, but these are guys that already have substantial major league time. They would be an easy win in a grievance case by the union, but it's not an easy win when it's for breaking protocol during a pandemic. There's no way the union wins that grievance. That's the difference. They have the opportunity now.
Yeah, that's it. Is there anything that has caught the two things that caught my mind were that and the amount of bad baseball, which I got to talk about. Anything that you haven't been on the air in a while. I'm sure you've been dying to say some things.
Well, it's just been crazy. As much as, and without getting too much into this, I don't think they should be playing a season. However,
I'm with you on that.
I am enjoying it so much. So it feels a little dirty, but I'm watching even more games than I typically do. And it's been fun to watch. I agree with you 100%. I've seen a lot of bad baseball. To expand on what you were saying about the Cubs, I watched they had the series with the Royals last week, and they are chattering from the Cubs dugout like it's a little league game. They are having fun. That was one of the coolest things I've seen so far this season.
I would say the best thing for me about baseball this year is I said that if I can't, having as much the same feeling, if I can't feel good about watching baseball, I'm going to try to attack this as 9-year-old Doug would and just have fun with the Cubs. And that part has been really cool, and the Cubs are just having a blast, and they're really, really talented from top to bottom. They really are a talented team. We tend to, because we like the new shiny thing or whatever. It's like Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, Contreras, Schwarber. Like, this is a team that from top to bottom, they have good players. Even their pitching staff has 3 good pitchers. I know most people wouldn't have said that going in, but I was big on Lester going into the season. I drafted him in TFGBI, and he's my second best starter.
Yeah.
And behind Kershaw, and but it's the fact that they have an atmosphere of this is going to be fun. Let's do what we want to. Let's just go play baseball because we like playing baseball. Whereas most of the people are like you and I are spending our time like plotting our times out of the house and putting on masks and stuff. These guys are like, well, I got 2.5 hours to play this game that I love, free of all their concerns. Just enjoy it. And yeah, the Cubs games have been the one positive thing.
It's been one of the cool things sticking with the Cubs, and it was before the season even started, was I was seeing the videos that Ian Happ was posting on Twitter when he was road tripping from Arizona to no, he would talk about that, and it was kind of promos for that. And I've seen a couple of those. But he kept updating his road trip by videoing where they were stopping to eat, where they were getting a drive through a curbside pickup to eat as they were making their way to Chicago from Arizona. And this is before the deal was made. Right? This is one of the things that encouraged me. These players have been told, we haven't signed anything yet, but it's going to happen. Go to the city you're going to play in,
Yeah. No, yeah, that's it. I think that I try not to talk too much about the Cubs because, I am a homer for them, and I have been my entire life. Being born in a hospital that you could, Glen Allen Hill could hit a baseball from Wrigley Field too. That's my old neighborhood, and that. But
I think that's one of the more fun things about this season is being a homer.
Yeah.
I have the one guy that I was able to get because he never did move up in drafts that I have in nearly every league, if not every league, is Ian Happ. As a Royal fan, being a homer for the Royals, I have Trevor Rosenthal in every league I'm in. And with the mess that the closer situation became, because I wasn't drafting him to be the closer at the beginning of the season or nearly as early as he has, but I was waiting on closers. And so my closer I had the most of was Hansel Robles. A closer I had a lot of, and everybody on here, and because I argued with people on this message board. So Malpal and George and everybody else on here can say, I told you so. I had a lot of Wade Davis, but fortunately,
I never argued on that one.
Trevor Rosenthal sitting on the back burner and was able to get Montero from the Rangers. So I have two of the closers that have 5 saves in a lot of my leagues, and it's worked out, but it's just crazy.
I was able to pick up Rosenthal, but I've had trouble. This is the one thing about, and I don't, the TGFBI is like, to me, there's 2 things that were weird about it. One is I've never played on NFBC before, so I knew that going into the season, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on how to do their stuff. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that I am completely unfamiliar with the culture of TGFBI, which really reflects on how you need to bid on FAB. And so basically, I've come to the realization that the way you bid on FAB there is that if they give you 1,000 FAB, you bid 1,000 FAB on everybody you want. You just get your one player. Because like, the most nonsense things that happen, like, you bid 450 FAB on that guy? My favorite was Tyler Chatwood, went for 349. Tyler Chatwood. No, that does. Like you're supposed to be an expert on something. But anyway,
he went for on average over $300, I believe, in the 26 leagues.
And in beautiful karma, his very next outing, as much as I love the Cubs, he had 11 runs.
Right. I was very, very pleased last week. I picked up Danny Santana, who was activated today. So I got him a week early because in the leagues he's not owned, he's going to go for a ton of money tonight. And on Montero,
I need to do more of that.
Changed my bid probably 7 times, and then I ended up. It was close to $200, but I got him, and the second place bid was $6 less. I was like, I couldn't have ended up on a better number after changing it 7 times. So it's. There's so much luck involved.
Yeah, I've actually come to the realization that I don't really like FAB anymore. It's like I mean, it's a logical extension if you're doing a auction type bidding, but if you're doing a snake draft, you should just have a standard thing because FAB is just rewarding the insane people. That's all it is.
I went into this season saying I would spend it early because
George Hupson said that somebody bid in his league $669.
Oh, he's talking about our AL only league here on this site, and that someone is me. So, and he knows that. That's why he put that in there.
Oh,
that was
now
when
in an AL only league.
To the AL. And my thought at the time when this was in February, I was still hoping for a 162 game season, and my thought was I'd rather spend 67% of my fab on someone that I'll have for the entire season than save it till July 31st.
You know, that is the real truth that is on the other side of the coin of what I'm saying when overspending on bed. It's like this year, probably more than any other year, you have to take into consideration that the guy that you're going to get in week 1 or week 2 or week 3 is going to have 3 or 4 times the value of the guy you get in week 7. You know, whereas in a regular league, the guy you get in week 1, week 2, week 3, you can get a guy in week 11 who's still going to have significant, you know, he's going to give you 80% of what week 2 gave you, you know? Right. And so there might be something to that I just didn't see, and maybe I'm the idiot, but there's been a lot of really crazy fab stuff. But I was the one arguing before the season that in my Dynasty League, we do fab, we were going to prorate the fab for 10 weeks. You know, like I think that it should have been cut down because the more you have, the stupider you are. It's like if you go to Las Vegas with 10 grand in your pocket, you're in trouble. You go there with $1,200, you're probably going to lose at most $1,200. You know, and if you give somebody 1,000 fab for a 10-week period, you're going to get some crazy stuff going on. Whereas if you said, "Hey, it's 2/7 of the thing, so we're going to give you 50 or 500," you know, half the stuff, you would get more reasonable bids because the cost of bidding insanely would actually exist.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part. the good side of this is once it's gone, we won't have to worry about it on Sundays anymore. Because as I talk about this and I'm getting ready for my stuff tonight, we have 6 weeks to play.
That's it.
And I'm sitting at $203 of 1,000 left in one league. Now, another NFBC style league that I'm in, I want to look real quick because I think I have most of my money left. And
yeah, I have a lot of money left because
it's time to spend it.
Because, well, it's like I haven't gotten the players I wanted all year long. But
there's probably a lot of players in the league that don't have much left, so you'll start getting them now. You'll start getting all the players you want.
I know I put in 3 bids already this week. 3 players, which is like 6 bids because you got to like double back on everybody and stuff. That's that was the worst thing about that fab bid 2 weeks ago. Is like I spent 3 hours putting in 58 different fab bids, and I wound up getting 4 players, but I still left the week with Corey Kluber and Yoenis Cespedes on my team. You know, it's like,
Yeah, and I think that's what I was telling myself earlier today. I have some dead players. I have Marcus Stroman on a team. So I have to put in 47 players just to make sure I get somebody. Yeah, but this is the kind of spot, if you don't need someone for this week, this is when you got to look that week ahead. Okay, who's playing 9 games next week, even though 3 of them are going to be, or 4 of them are going to be 7-inning games. That might hit towards the top of a lineup, so they might get me several more at bats, especially in the NFBC format where you can change your hitters out halfway through the week. So
you can change your hitters out? I didn't know that.
Before Friday's games, you can change your hitters, but not pitchers.
Well, that probably has been hurting me a little bit.
Yeah, so if there's a team like the Royals last week, it was weird with the 60-game season. I'm sure it's not going to happen often, but they had an old school week where they had both Monday and Thursday off. So if there are any other teams like that, even if that's it, this is going to sound crazy, but even if that's Mike Trout for the Angels, and at most he can play 2 games, if I have an average player that's going to play a possibility of 6 games, I'm benching Mike Trout. Now, you have 5 outfield spots. That's a bad example. You'd have somebody else you could sit probably, but it's that kind of stuff that we have to look at this year more than ever.
I put in a good bid for the guy I've been talking up because your Kansas City Royal is. Have you seen him pitch, Josh Stelmont?
Absolutely,
Love that guy.
He's amazing. I'm curious. What do you think the trade deadline is going to look like?
I don't. I mean, you have a couple things at play. That's a really good question. One is that most teams are going to be in it. Now, there might be a handful of smart teams that are like, we're really not in it, even though we're in it, right? So you're looking at there's going to be probably 5 to 7 selling teams. But I said this before the season that my worry is that everybody has a veto on the trade this year. It's like it's like if I were playing baseball, I have a reasonable fear of coronavirus, okay? And I would have went to camp the way Sean Doolittle went to camp and said, show me I'm going to be safe, right? And they did. And he stayed and played, right? I don't think Sean Doolittle wants to take a chance on the Royals protocols or the A's protocols when he knows the protocols. So if, let's say, I would say that the trading would be normally a lot of like the relief pitch help and stuff. Like I could see the Cubs trading for a relief pitcher.
Right.
But the relief pitcher would say anybody.
And that's exactly where I'm going.
Anybody that gets traded can veto the trade by saying, I'm done playing baseball this year.
Right. Because that's where I'm going. Trevor Rosenthal was signed as a long shot, and if he worked out, they could flip him.
Rosenthal
because he's signed for a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
No matter how great he is, and the greater he is, the worse chance the Royals are going to have of signing him for next year. Although he is from there, his wife has family there, but he's not signing with the Royals an extension. He was signed hoping that he would be as good as he is his second year off Tommy John, get his command back, and they could flip him. So with Stalmont, who they have locked up for several years, that he's the ideal guy, and that's exactly why I posed that question. Is he going to be worth anything this year?
Well, that's the other part about the other thing that hurts the trading is that if let's take the Yankees, right? The Yankees are notorious for making trades. I know that they haven't done it as much in recent years in the past, but they're the guys that are doing it. How much are you really going to give up for a player to win this kind of goofed up year where you have to go through 4 rounds to win the championship and anything could happen? It's like that's the other side of the coin, which is going to depress those trades. Is that no one's going to want to give up an awful lot, you know? You're going to see situations like that. There are a number of guys that have joined a team, like Trevor Rosenthal, like Cameron Maybin on the Tigers, who hasn't been playing, but who signed with the team for the sole purpose of showing that they can still play. Matt Kemp on the Rockies, and they're hoping to turn it to someone else. And those guys would gladly move to another team. But outside of that, I don't know how like Chris Bryant's got a year left on his contract. This is the kind of time that you would go, maybe they should trade him away. What would you? And Chris Bryant is easily in the top 5 third baseman in baseball, right? What would you give up to get Chris Bryant for this year?
I don't think we're going to see a consensus top 100 prospect traded this year.
You might see some of those guys that like used to be a top 100 prospect.
Right.
Those are the guys that but at the same time, just like you're saying, the top 100 prospects aren't going to move. The true elite players aren't going to move. It's going to be the afterthought guys, the Starlin Castros, the Asdrubal Cabreras, those are the guys where they can be very functionally helpful for the team that they're on. I mean, hell, I imagine the Orioles would trade just about everybody on their roster, except for probably Austin Hayes.
Right.
And it's like if there's somebody to give them something that they thought was at least as good as what they got. But yeah, who's going to make that move? I mean, who might do it? Crazy guys. Derek Jeter and the Marlins. If they were right there, that's the legacy of the Marlins. Seize a moment and then just be a bad team all the other time.
Right. Even under previous ownership, they may try that, and it would be teams that aren't going to be back next year. Here's what's going to be crazy, and you kind of alluded to it. As easy is the wrong word. You still got to be one of the top 16 out of 30 teams. But as much more available as postseason spots are this year, it's going to be much harder to win the whole thing.
Yeah, you have to. You could get hot for 2 weeks, but by not being hot for 3 weeks, you're out of it.
Right.
And you could be the best team in baseball and have 3 bad games, and that's the end of your season.
Right. It's going to be fun to watch.
I'm much more looking forward to that, because I think that you'll be in a situation where their guys are in it. I mean, I actually don't like. We've talked about how I said there's been a lot of bad baseball. It's like baseball is one of the. It's a sport a lot like golf, where a big part of the game is keeping your head in the game when you're not actually playing the game. And the baseball players haven't had to do that in a while. But come playoff time, they'll be there, or they won't be playing, and there's going to be some fun there, especially with some kind of if it was some kind of odd matchups that you wouldn't normally see, because like teams are going to get to pick who they get to play, which I don't know. That would be like I can't imagine if I was in like high school playoffs if some team decided that they were going to jump the order and pick my team to play against them. I can guarantee you that I would be suspended for a couple of games during that series. Mm-hmm. Like it would piss me off that much.
Right.
And, it's like there's going to be some. So like that kind of vitriol on top of everything is going to make for a pretty interesting playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be fun to watch. There was something else I was going to ask.
We're doing the 5-minute warning, so say what you want to say, and thank you for being here.
No, thank you. And I'm trying to. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you, and it is not coming to mind, and I did not write it down. But no, it's been great. Like I said, I'm having a lot of fun watching baseball. And
I figured that was a good thing, because you watching baseball, I've watched baseball, like I said, I've watched mostly Cubs games, a couple of Marlins games, and then I watch the highlights. I see everything.
Yeah,
but it's hard. I found it harder this year to watch, sort of like the late game last night was the Dodgers with the Angels, which normally in my life, I'm not saying I'd be intently on that, but that would be like I'd put that on and it'd be in the background while I'm falling asleep. It's like I didn't even care to do that. It's like I'm finding it harder to watch games I don't have a dog in the hunt in.
Here's something interesting. You brought up the Angels. How crazy is it that a player being injured has actually helped people that drafted him? And Shohei Ohtani. Like, he is much more valuable being in the lineup every day than
that is the story of Shohei Ohtani. It's like for another site a long time ago, I wrote a very, very critical thing about Shohei Ohtani, which on my fantasy tombstone it'll say, "Here's the guy that hated Ohtani." I didn't hate Ohtani. I just hated the idea of him playing 3 days a week as a hitter and one day a week as a pitcher.
Right.
It's like pick one and be great at it. And the truth is, like I did say, pick pitching, because you're never going to be that great of a hitter, which I might be wrong about.
I still think they they may at some point. They signed him to a contract, and they can tell him to do whatever they want him to do. But so far, they have taken his input, and he still wants to be a starting pitcher. But I think at some point, very soon,
based on the way they're
maybe now, that it's okay. You still want to pitch? You're going to the bullpen, and you're going to be our DH every day, and we might bring you in out of the bullpen for an inning, and you're still our DH.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that up to date, the Angels have yet to say to Shohei Ohtani, "We're not going to do just what you want him to do." Like they've given him, which I think was part of their pitch to close him.
It was exactly. So that's part of the issue.
Whatever you want, we'll do. It's like you should be having surgery instead of pitching a game. Nah, go out there, let up 7 runs. Who cares? It's like we're just gonna keep you happy because the truth is that guy is making no money whatsoever. He's arbitration eligible next year, right? Under the rules.
Who's that?
Otani. Or is it 2 years from now? He's arbitration. He's under the minimum guidelines. He's a minor
I think
league.
they actually signed him to a contract, kind of like Evan White. Yeah.
I was unaware of that. So anyway,
usually most of at least the big time superstar type players that come over from Japan and Korea get some type of guaranteed contract.
We got 2 minutes. I want to ask you a question because you are a fellow. You're going to turn the game off. You're a fellow college football fan. Are they going to play college football this year or no? Should they play?
There may be a few schools. But I doubt it. It's a liability issue. If the players stand fast, as I believe they should, I know I would, and aren't going to sign a waiver of release of liability, then the schools aren't going to play.
I'm not just a UCF fan. I'm a 4-year UCF athlete. I can go down there and talk to those guys. The UCF football players are asking for hazard pay to play this year.
On top of no waiver for
no waiver. They're asking for money, and I'm right behind them. That's a little bit of inside information. It's like we want to get paid to play here. You can make. I don't really think baseball should be played, but you can make the argument the guy's getting $1 million a year. He can take some risk. You can make that argument, and I agree that that's a valid argument. You cannot do it with these football players. There's nothing I'd rather do more than watch UCF on the weekends.
I mean, we have all the evidence we already need anyway, but if they're just putting a stamp on the fact that they're not student athletes, they are an asset.
Yeah. So, well, with that, you can close off because George should be on in a minute or so. And let's check
Absolutely.
the camera. Thanks to you guys for being out there. Thanks, Durf. Thanks, Michael Magid was out there. Guess Alexis, Taco, Lenny, and some guy named Royals.
Yeah.
And,
no, it's fun, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I should do this periodically because I know that you got more to say than I do, and it's nice to get your voice back on. I didn't realize that you weren't broadcasting. I would have asked you sooner.
It's crazy. I'm officially Mr. Mom, and now with school starting, Mr. Teacher, because I am not sending my daughter to school, kind of along with the players not playing.
Yeah.
And with being in the Eastern time zone, I used to do this stuff in the middle of the night when the rest of my family was sleeping, and now I can't.
I was just thinking that you were, you probably have like 3 weeks of stuff just bottled up, and so periodically I'm going to give you a call and say, hey, join me. Not
Sounds
every week,
great.
but once in a while. It was great having you. And
I appreciate it.
You're controlling the show, so you can sign out however you want. Let's have a moment. Let's have a moment of awkward silence.
No, we got to get off of here. We're a minute late.
Yep.
Almost. George is going to start kicking us off soon. Have a great night, everybody. George is next.
See you around.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thanks, Kevin. We'll talk somewhere else.